Lord, it's in my soul, stone cold certified, American born and country fried. Shoo-wee! What's going on, friends and neighbors? This is your friendly neighborhood country singer-songwriter Ryan Harmon, coming to you straight out of Lamar, by golly, Arkansas, American born and country fried. Well, it has been a minute, to say the least. I guess you could say that I have been a man of my word when I said that this podcast wouldn't necessarily be the same schedule all the time. Or did I just say that in my head? Either way, I didn't lie, whoever I told it to. Thank y'all so much, not only for taking the time to listen, but also for your patience for that, let's be honest, ridiculous wait for this episode. I was joking with a friend of mine the other day that I had been wanting to do this podcast for a while. And I almost started it earlier this year and then decided against it because, I had a whole lot of other stuff going on and I wasn't able to really put the kind of focus on it that I wanted to do it the right way. And so finally last month I said, I think it's the right time. It kind of seems like I've got everything in order and got all my ducks in a row to where I can go ahead and do this. And so I started it and I knew it was going to happen. I knew this would happen. Haha, joke, get it? No? Okay, moving on. I knew it was going to happen as soon as I launched the podcast. All of a sudden, here came a bunch of stuff to do, and it's all good stuff, so no worries there. I'm busy, but it's a very good busy, so that's good news. But still, I apologize for that wait on that, but thank you so much for your patience. Now, before I go any further, I do want to say, even though I'm always trying to be entertaining in some way, sometimes I fail, sometimes I succeed, probably fail more than anything, but I do want to say on a very serious note, all of my love and thoughts and prayers going out to everybody who's been affected by this hurricane. I've already seen photos of Alabama and Mississippi that got hit really hard, and I'm sure a lot of other things that I'm just not aware of yet, but man, it's just awful. You would think that we've already been through enough this year, but then stuff like that, and the wildfires out in California, how could I forget that? It's just awful, but it reminds you that things can always get worse when we least expect it, and hopefully if we've learned anything from this year, it's that we really need to be there for each other. So again, my thoughts and prayers go out to everybody who's been affected by the hurricanes and the wildfires. It's just a terrible situation. But I don't want to really harp on that too much. Want to try to get back to putting a smile on your face if I can. So want to get right into what I was wanting to discuss on this episode, which is a lot of new music, oh, you know what? I almost forgot. So I made a decision without asking anybody that one thing I was missing on this podcast, aside from overall talent and, direction, was transitions between topics. Just about every good-sounding professional podcast has some kind of transition between segments. Well, I didn't, and I thought maybe if we threw that in, that it would sound just a little bit better. So let's see, we're going to do another segment, so that's plenty. All right, new segment. Oh, now I do want to say, first of all, two of the things that I've been really excited about in country music lately, Chris Stapleton and Eric Church, two of my favorites, both have new albums coming out very soon. We've had a little bit of new music from them, but we don't have the full albums yet, obviously, so I don't really want to go too in-depth on just a few songs. I'd rather wait until the full albums come out and do kind of a more in-depth review on the albums as a whole. But I do want to say that with the Chris Stapleton track, Starting Over, I knew I was going to like it. I wasn't surprised by that at all. It's a great sounding track. It's very, very acoustic driven. And Chris, again, is surrounded by pretty much the same team that he's had since his first album, I think. So, I'm sure we can expect, I don't want to say more of the same because that almost kind of sounds negative, but I'm sure we can expect a lot of consistency. So if you've liked his previous stuff, I'm sure it's going to be right there. But I did hear a little sample of something in the album teaser on YouTube that really caught my attention. It was this really hard-hitting, like almost hard rock song. And I don't know what it is. I've never heard that before. So I'm really curious to see what that is and to see if maybe there's going to be a little bit of a direction change on this album. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure he's still going to do the kind of music that he's known for, but there may be a couple of things on there that kind of throw us for a loop. So we'll see, but I'm really excited to hear the album. Again, it's a great track. I did notice something, though, speaking of, comparing Chris Stapleton and Eric Church, Well, if you can compare them, I don't really think you can. They're two totally different artists. But I did notice that they've got two totally different modes of operation when it comes to putting out the singles for their records. I noticed that Chris always seems to put out kind of a more mellow, kind of introspective tune, I guess maybe is the right term, as the first single for his albums. You know, you look at Traveler, the first single was the title track, very introspective tune. You go to From A Room, Volumes 1 and 2. I think the singles on those, the first singles were Millionaire and Broken Halos. So, you know, he always has that kind of pattern of putting out songs like that as his first singles. And this album is no exception. Starting Over is that same kind of mood. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, it's a great song, and I actually think it's a really interesting way of setting up an album because you don't really see anybody else doing that. And it usually ends up kind of being a cool way to just kind of start people off with the music and kind of get the cycle rolling again. On the other side of it, Eric Church does the exact opposite. And I'm not going to act like this is a unique viewpoint because I actually heard him talk about this during his country radio seminar interview from earlier this year. If you haven't heard that and you're an Eric Church fan, even if you're not, you got to go look that up because he really goes in depth into a lot of things that kind of drive him musically and creatively and why he's made some of the decisions he's made in his career. So it's a really, really great listen. But he was actually talking about the way that he plans his first singles for his albums. And he was talking about how he always wants to pick songs that probably wouldn't have a chance if they weren't released as the first single. One of the examples he gave was for The Outsiders. He put out the title track first because he said, you know, that was a rock song. And had it not been for us releasing that as the first single, it might not have had a chance. And yet now it's one of the favorites that we do live. All the fans want to hear that at our shows. And the first single he put out for this new album he's doing was Stick That in Your Country Song. And I think it might end up having a little bit of an opposite effect. You know, he kind of expects these first singles that are kind of out there to not necessarily perform as well on the charts, but I think Stick That in Your Country Song is actually going to probably be more successful, if I can speak good English, than he imagined. I mean, that song just, I think a lot of it is lyrically, it speaks to something that a lot of people have been craving. You know, just a song that's about the real world and everything that's going on, good or bad, you know, and we don't get a lot of songs like that anymore, be it country, rock, any genre, so it's kind of refreshing to hear that. Of course, it was co-written by one of my favorite writers, Jeffrey Steele, so of course I'm going to love it. Jeffrey Steele, Eric Church, yeah, that's a pretty great combination when you've got Eric Church doing a Jeffrey Steele tune. Now, the way that Eric is doing this new album is really interesting too, because what they did is they went up to this place up in the mountains of, I think, North Carolina for like a month, and every day they would get up, write a song, and that night they would record that same song. So instead of spending weeks or months really going over every little detail of these songs, and then by the time they record them, they're kind of sick of them, the magic is there because it's still a brand new song for them. They just wrote it that day, and so they don't really have a chance to get tired of it when they record it, you know. So I'm really interested to see how that goes. So far, the songs he's released from it have been really, really strong, and I think this might end up being my favorite album of his since Chief. But again, we'll see. I'll wait until the whole album comes out, but for sure I'm really excited about those. And moving on to the main portion. Oh, you know what? I almost forgot. Obligatory transition music, that's enough. People are going to get so sick of that. But the two main things I wanted to talk about on this episode were a couple of albums that have really caught my attention lately and that I really can't get enough of. The first one is the new album from Mo Pitney, one of my favorite new country artists. His new album, Ain't Looking Back. If you haven't heard this, which I got to be honest, I'm kind of surprised it's not getting any commercial country airplay. I have heard them advertise this new album on country radio stations, but the songs themselves haven't really been getting any airplay, and that kind of puzzles me because it's on Curb Records, one of the more well-known labels in Nashville, and Mo is, this is just my opinion, please, don't take it for anything other than that, but he's really the only artist I'm hearing right now that is kind of filling that gap that we have every once in a while where we need kind of that neo-traditional artist. kind of like a Randy Travis, Josh Turner kind of thing. And Mo's really the only guy I'm hearing lately that is doing that stuff as far as being on a major label in Nashville. So I'm kind of surprised that he's not getting airplay with this, especially since a lot of these songs would fit in perfectly with what's being played on country radio right now. The album opens with A Music Man, which is an incredible song, and it's one that I heard him talk about. I think I first heard him play it on Larry's Country Diner, and he was talking about the inspiration for the song being that after he moved to town and put out his first album, which is also a great record if you haven't checked it out, he said that he kind of lost sight of why he started playing music in the first place and what he was really doing it for. So A Music Man is about that kind of obstacle in his life, and it's a beautiful song. And he has Jamie Johnson singing background vocals on it, and I love when people do that, when they have such a distinctive voice doing background vocals. And of course, as soon as Jamie comes in, you know it's him the second that he starts singing. So that's a really cool touch too. A lot of really great tracks on this album. There's actually nothing I skip over when I've listened to this, but just hitting some of the highlights. Ain't Bad for a Good Old Boy. That's a song that, again, it puzzles me that this is not getting airplay, because to me, that's a song that would fit in probably better than anything on this record, and it would be a really natural thing to put in the rotation for country radio. So I'm really surprised that hasn't happened yet, but it's just a really cool, laid-back song. Actually, a lot of similar songs like that on the record. Boy Gets the Girl. Ain't Looking Back, the title track, is another great tune that kind of seems like it comes from the same place as A Music Man, where he's kind of having this obstacle he's overcoming. In the chorus he says, I ain't looking back, why would I when I ain't going that way? I'm stuttering a lot during this episode. But that's okay. We're going to keep rolling. I'm not going to edit it and shine it up and anything. I know that's not going to surprise anybody. But, one of the things that I love about this record is it ends just as strong as it starts. And I don't hear a lot of records that's true of. I love when it happens, and usually it's more like concept records where I hear that. But actually the last 4 songs on this record are really, really strong. And they kind of really fit together well for ending the record. Mattress on the Floor, I remember reading a post from Mo where he said that when he got to town, he heard somebody play this song at the Bluebird Cafe. And actually, I should have had my notes for who wrote that song, so I'm sorry. We'll probably, if I can remember, I'll add that into the description here. But he said it was a song that really spoke to the struggles he went through when he was just starting out and married and having kids. So that's a really cool song, and one that if you didn't know it was written by somebody else, you would think he wrote it because it fits so well for him. Local Honey, again, another really fun song with a great groove in it. The music video for that is really cool too if you haven't checked that out. The last 2 songs really tie up this record perfectly. Old Stuff Better, which has, again, that kind of that same vibe as A Music Man, where he really kind of, and I don't want to compare this song to any other songs because it's not really fair because they're totally different songs from different writers, but it almost has a vibe of Stuff That Works, song that Guy Clark and Rodney Crowell wrote. But for anybody who's a classic country fan, that's a song you're really going to dig for sure. And then the song that closes this record, Jonas. This might be my favorite song of the year. This song, it was co-written by Dean Dillon, and again, I should have had my notes of who else wrote the song, but there's my unprofessional streak for the week. Or month, as we found out last time. But the first time that I heard this song was when Dean played it on a live concert special, and it blew me away the first time I heard it. And Dean has such a great way of putting beautiful melodies that build as the lyrics build to a song, and this is no exception. This is probably one of my favorite songs that Dean Dillon has ever written, and the chorus of the song says it all. Is he a lunatic, a liar, or the Lord? And it's a song about the crucifixion of Jesus, and it's beautiful. And not that you really have to be a Christian to appreciate this song, but I will say that even if you're not, I would have to think you would still love this song. It's just such a beautifully told story and so well written, and Mo just absolutely knocks it out of the park with his performance of it. It starts off with just guitar and vocal and just builds up more as the song progresses. It's just a really, really killer track. Transition music. I got it that time. I remembered. All right, the last album I wanted to talk about today was one that kind of surprised me. And don't get me wrong, I knew I was going to enjoy it, but I didn't think it was one I was going to listen to more than maybe a couple of times, just because of what it was. It's Jon Pardi's new album, Rancho Fiesta Sessions. Now, I have to explain this first. It's an all covers album, and usually I'm not a huge fan of those just because a lot of times it just feels like filler to me. It just feels like whatever the artist or band is just kind of putting that out as product to have for the year because they don't have new music to put out yet. And so a lot of times I get one or two listens out of it, and that's about all it's going to be worth for me. I can't really find anything about it that's appealing beyond that. And a lot of times, they'll put way too much thought into it, and it's way overproduced, and it just doesn't even feel like they had a good time making the record. All that being said, this Jon Pardi record throws all of that out the window. This is one of the best cover albums I have ever heard, and that's saying something. Any genre, rock, country, pop, whatever. I absolutely can't get enough of this record. It really sounds like Jon and his band just had fun. It's like they just got together and jammed and pressed record. And that's exactly what I want out of cover albums. And I don't know why more people don't do it like this. Outside of people who do covers for live albums, I don't really get this kind of vibe from covers, so I was really excited to hear this. The record opens up with two country classics back-to-back, opens with Merle Haggard's The Bottle Let Me Down, and Honky Tonk Man, which he does the Dwight Yoakam version, and both of those songs, such a strong way to open the record, and really, I feel like it kind of backs up the direction that Jon Pardi's been going with his music the last couple of years. Last year his album Heartache Medication, which just absolutely floored me. I could not believe how good that album was, and I couldn't believe how many traditional country elements were on that album. I mean, the fiddle just shines on that record. So many great. Again, like I was talking about with Mo, it's kind of like that neo-traditional vibe. So it's great to hear more of that going on. But it's got a lot of honky-tonk vibe to it, too. And this Rancho Fiesta Sessions is no exception. He just keeps going with that. I hope he does more. I will say, out of all the covers that he did on here, the last two on the album, oh, and I do want to mention before I get there, I almost forgot. What a surprise. I'm rambling. But he does a really great cover of Joe Diffie's Prop Me Up Beside the Jukebox, which was really cool since, unfortunately, we lost Joe earlier this year. So it was really cool to hear that. But, again, the last two on the album really kind of threw me because I wasn't expecting these songs. But once I heard them, it made perfect sense. He closes it with The Waiting by Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, which, again, when I saw that title, I wasn't even thinking Tom Petty for some reason. But once the song started, of course, I knew what it was. And it made perfect sense because for Jon Pardi to pick a Tom Petty song, that would probably be one of the best. I would love to hear him do like one of the Tom Petty solo tunes, maybe You Wreck Me or You Don't Know How It Feels, something like that. I'd love to hear Pardi do a version of that. But then the one that really threw me was a Prince cover. He did Nothing Compares to You. And I never would have expected that in a million years. But I got to tell you, it's one of my favorite Prince covers I've ever heard. And again, I think it goes back to the fact that they had fun with it. They just set up, pressed record, played it, had fun with it, put a lot of energy into it. They didn't overthink it. It was really well done, a lot of emotion with Jon's vocals. They really did a great job on that song, and the band just kills it throughout this whole record. So that's a really, really cool track to check out. Listen to the whole record. It's only 7 or 8 songs, so it's a pretty short listen. But if you've only got time to check out a couple of songs, for sure check out that Prince cover. I think you're going to be really pleasantly surprised by that. Now, I will say, the music video for Honky Tonk Man shows Jon and the band set up in what looks to be like a warehouse or something like that, and they're just set up in a circle just jamming on this song. And if that's not the way that they recorded the whole record, they need to lie and say they did. Because that's the vibe it gives off. And again, that's exactly what I want these kind of records to be. So I was really glad that that's the direction Jon Pardi took it in. And hopefully he'll do more of these. I'm not going to lie, I would love to hear him do more cover records like this. And this is one that surprisingly, it's been out a few weeks now, I'm still listening to it. So that ought to tell you something. So with that being said, 2 albums to check out, Mo Pitney, Ain't Looking Back, and Jon Pardi, Rancho Fiesta Sessions. we've already gone, I think, longer than we needed to. So hopefully I haven't rambled too much. But again, thank y'all so much for your patience for this episode. Thank you for checking it out. And we will see you hopefully a lot sooner than the space of time that came between the last 2 episodes. So until next time, I am your friendly neighborhood country singer-songwriter, Ryan Harmon. And this is Ryan Harmon, American-born and country-fried. See you later, friends. Shoo-wee! Had to do it one more time.
American-born and country fried.
Find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Ryan Harmon Music. And visit RyanHarmonMusic.com for news, upcoming shows, music, and more.